Hello, geography students. This is Mr. Everton, and this is a screencast all about two major world religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, that both come from South Asia. The image that you see here on the left is an image from Hinduism, and the image on the right is an image from Buddhism. And this is going to be a fairly quick overview, right? I mean, the video won't be short, but it's really hard to, get everything about a religion into one video. So this is like the basics. So we're going to have a few different essential questions for this video. We're going to talk about something called reincarnation, and then we're going to talk about how Hinduism developed and how did it spread. And then we're going to talk about how did Buddhism develop and how did Buddhism spread. So first, what's reincarnation? Reincarnation is the idea that every living being has a soul that doesn't go anywhere, like that the body dies but that the soul remains, right? And so if you're reincarnated, the idea is that when your body dies, your soul will continue to exist and will pass on into another body, probably a human body, maybe not, but this is a important belief to both of these religions from South Asia. They both believe in reincarnation. They both believe that your soul will continue to live after you die and that it will move into a different body. So Hinduism, to start with, Hinduism believes that all things in the universe are all part of one soul, and they call that thing Brahman. And they believe that there are many different versions, many different gods, that are all different like kinds of Brahman, but they're all part of this one thing. That's a little deep, right? So there's this universal soul called Brahman, and then there are specific gods that are like different faces of Brahman. And you can see the big famous three right here: Brahma on the left, Vishnu, and Shiva. But there are many, many more Hindu gods than that. Hindu religion believes in tons of different gods and goddesses that are all different parts of this one soul. In India, going back thousands of years, there are different castes or groups that are divided in Indian society based on their jobs. So the caste system is shaped like this, like a pyramid, right, in this diagram, because there's more of the job at the bottom than there is the job at the top. Is like the pinnacle. It's like the tiniest little group is at the top, and that's like the good one, right? That's the one that you want to be. And then the further you go down the pyramid, the less good your job is and the less good your life is. And these different groups are separate in Hindu society. So the Shudra are the workers, the people who do the grunt work that doesn't require a whole lot of intelligence. And they're like the bottom of Indian society. And then the Vaisyas are like the merchants, and the like sort of the skilled labor, the people who need to know things in order to do their job, people who are skilled craftsmen who like make things with their hands. Then there's the Kshatriyas, which are the military leaders and the politicians. So like warriors are Kshatriyas. And then there's the Brahmin, and the Brahmin are the priests, and they're at the top of society, and their job is the most intellectual, right? The smartest job is at the top. Like they're the ones who are like having the deep thoughts. So in Hinduism, which is, comes from India, the way to move up the ladder, like you won't move up the ladder in your lifetime, but you can move up the ladder if you do a good job in this lifetime by earning karma. So if I'm a Shudra and I work really hard at digging ditches or building roads or whatever like really uninteresting physical labor I have to do, if I do that really hard, then I will get some karma, right? I'll get good karma. And by getting that good karma, when I die, I can be born again in the next life in a higher caste. I can move up the ladder, move up the pyramid to a better life next time. So maybe then I become a Vaisya, and maybe I work really hard as a merchant and I'm selling my produce and I'm like doing the best job at being a Vaisya that I can be. I'll get some more good karma, right? And then that means the next time I die, I'll be reborn higher still, and I'll move to become a Kshatriya, and I'll become a warrior, and I'll fight in battles, and I'll like defeat my enemies, and I'll like protect my city, and then I'll get some good karma. And then when I die, I'll be reborn again, this time as a Brahmin, as a priest. And then it's my job to interpret the religious scriptures, the holy texts, and like pray and like understand Hinduism and like think all these deep thoughts. And then I'll get good karma. And then I'll achieve enlightenment or moksha. Moksha is the Hindu word for enlightenment. And the whole idea is to stop being reborn and to become like part of Brahman again and like go back to being part of the universe. Because being reborn over and over and over again is a drag, right? Life is hard. You don't want to be like just living forever. So the idea is if you do what you're supposed to do, you'll get good karma and you'll be reincarnated higher and higher and higher until you get to the top of the pyramid, and then you'll achieve enlightenment. And that's the goal. That's what you want. Now, there's one group of people in Indian society I haven't talked about. They're on the bottom over here, called untouchables. And they cannot move up the pyramid. And they have the worst jobs in Indian society. Untouchables have terrible jobs like digging latrines, like places for people to go to the bathroom, or like tanning animal hides, or like collecting garbage off the streets. And there's been a lot of discrimination against untouchables in Indian society for hundreds of years, and they've tried in the last 100 years to try to reform that and make that better, and not treat people who are born into this class this way. But it's a part of Hindu society, Indian society, that is thought of in Hinduism traditionally as being unclean and like not a person that you should talk to. And like to the point where like if an untouchable shadow fell over a priest, like the priest would go home and clean themselves. They would go home and take a bath because they couldn't have the like filthiness from the shadow of the untouchable. So Indian society began in the Indus Valley area, the Indus River Valley, in the area that's shaded purple on the map. And this is where Hinduism gradually evolved. Hinduism is one of the world's oldest religions. Excuse me, I needed some coffee. And it evolved very slowly. We don't totally know how it came about because it is so old. 2500 BCE, that's 2500 years before Jesus Christ was born for a Western, timeline. We do know that later Hinduism did spread some to Southeast Asia. It spread to Thailand and Indonesia through trade, through people buying and selling things. But if you look at a world map today, and you look at the numbers by continent, by region, really, you can see, like there's 2 million Hindus in North America. There's 600,000 in Latin America. There's 1.6 million in sub-Saharan Africa. Then look at Asia. There's 1.025 billion Hindus in Asia. If you look at this choropleth map, you can see that fully 70 to 85% of the world's Hindu population is located in India. Hinduism is an ethnic religion. It's a religion that's associated with a specific group of people. And it didn't really, let me just back up. It wasn't like Christianity where people were trying to convert new people. You were born into it and you practiced it. And so the reason why you see some Hinduism in other countries is because people who believe in Hinduism moved to those countries. But it's not a kind of thing where Hinduism is like trying to spread and attract new followers. It just doesn't work like that. So now we're going to talk about Buddhism. Buddhism is based on the teachings of one guy. His name is Siddhartha Gautama. He was born a Kshatriya in northern India, in a part of the world today is called Nepal. And he didn't like the caste system. He thought that the caste system in traditional Indian society was really unfair. And he thought that it wasn't right, for example, that that untouchables should be outside of society, that Shudras should have to be reborn over and over and over again to achieve enlightenment. And the Buddha, Siddhartha, they're the same person. Siddhartha changed his name to the Buddha. Siddhartha he discovered a way for himself that he said could let anybody achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. That if you acted the right way in your life today, you could achieve enlightenment now, and you wouldn't have to wait and be reborn a bunch of times. So he was born a Kshatriya to a noble, a leader of a city who lived in a palace, and people would come and show their dedication to the leader of this city. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. And when the Buddha was born, there was a prophecy. When Siddhartha, was born, there was a prophecy that he would be a great religious leader, and his father didn't want that for him, so he kept him secluded in the palace. And so he led this life of wealth and privilege, and getting it on with the many fine ladies that were available to him, and eating all the food that he wanted, and he was set up, right? But he got curious and he wanted to go out into the world, and so he started sneaking out, and he was on his journeys outside the palace. He started to encounter things about the world that he'd never learned about because he'd been sheltered his whole life. He'd been in this palace, not exposed to the world. So first, on one of his trips out into the world, he saw an old man. And he's like, what's the deal with that? I've never seen an old man before. And so he became aware of the fact that people grow old and die, and that is not fun, and that is suffering. That when you grow old and your body stops working, you suffer. And then later, he encountered a sick man. And he'd never encountered sickness before. He'd been sheltered from that. He saw somebody who was in great pain with an illness that couldn't be cured, and he was really upset. He realized, oh gosh, that's suffering again. People in the world have it really hard, and they're suffering. And then another trip out, he encountered a corpse, a dead person, and he realized that life is temporary, and that we have to let go of our life, and that is suffering, and that really hurts. And then on another trip out, he encountered a holy man who was praying and meditating on all these things. And he decided that he was going to do that. And he abandoned his life. He abandoned his family. He abandoned his wealth. And he went to go live a life of quiet meditation and reflect on all the pain that he had seen in the world. So he prayed and meditated under this tree, a Bodhi tree, for I think 40 days and 40 nights. I might get that wrong. I'm sorry. For a long time underneath this tree. And he meditated and he prayed, and eventually he achieved what he thought, what he described as enlightenment or nirvana. He believed that people needed to follow an eightfold path, that there were 8 general things that people needed to do in their lives in order to achieve nirvana or enlightenment. And then if you did these things, which are on the screen here, right view, right intentions, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness, and if you lived your life that way, then you could achieve enlightenment and you didn't have to wait. So the Buddha's teaching of achieving nirvana now spread out of northern India, across India, and then into Southeast Asia. And then a funny thing happened. It kind of left India. Buddhism didn't stay put in India. It moved. And missionaries, Buddhist missionaries, which are people who want to make other people convert to their religion, began leaving India and going to China, began going to Southeast Asia, began going to Korea and Japan. And those places where those missionaries went, that's where Buddhism is still at today. Now, you can look and see that 400 million Buddhists, almost 500 million Buddhists, are in Asia. But if you look at this map and you look at this choropleth map, you can see that 90 to 100% of the population in Thailand and Myanmar is Buddhist. That's the heaviest concentration of Buddhism in the world. You can see that there's Buddhism in China, that there's Buddhism in Japan, but there's relatively little Buddhism left in India. India is only 1 to 5% of the population is Buddhist, which is less percentage than the United States. So Buddhism was born in India, but it left, and it primarily now is practiced in the rest of Southeast Asia, in China, Korea, and Japan. So today we talked about reincarnation, which is really important to both the religions of Hinduism and Buddhism. We talked about some of the important ideas of Hinduism and how it spread. We talked about some of the important ideas of Buddhism and how it spread. And the main difference, they're both trying to achieve enlightenment, but Hinduism says you have to be reincarnated many times to achieve enlightenment. And Buddhism says you can achieve enlightenment in this life as long as you lead a good and noble life. Thanks for watching. And if you have questions, which you might, because this is tricky stuff, please feel free to email me and I will get back to you. Thanks. Bye.